Have you ever looked at all the heavy weapons in the finals and wondered, how exactly am I supposed to use all of these? Or maybe you've just been killed by the flamethrower one too many times and you need to know how to counter it. Well, you've come to the right place, as in this video, I'll be showing you exactly how to use and counter every heavy weapon in the finals. As always, I have timestamps below, so let's get started. All right, we are going to start things off here with the SHAK-50. This is probably one of the most popular heavy weapons at the moment and one of my personal favorites. It has some really good damage, pretty decent range overall, but it does have some core weaknesses, so let's go over them. So I would definitely classify this weapon as a more divey burst damage weapon. You can definitely take fights from like this distance right here and still do pretty okay with it, but what you really want to be looking for is kind of these closer range engagements kind of around this area right here, and you want to be taking advantage of the hip fire of this weapon as much as possible, because take a look at this. Very good. A lot of people just like to aim down sights with this weapon, and that's like all they do, but they don't realize that the hip fire is pretty much just as impactful at those close ranges. So once you get into about this range right here, you definitely want to swap to just using the hip fire. Don't really ADS at this range unless you really have a good reason for it. Maybe if you're looking for some aim assist on controller or something like that, but if you're on mouse and keyboard, definitely be hip firing from this range. You can use a variety of specializations with it. Mesh is all right with it. Charge and Slam's pretty decent. Goo Gun is also pretty decent as well, but I do think that Winch is actually the best specialization because you can pull people in and get some pretty ridiculous time to kills on them. This thing will delete lights, especially if you have that winch combo, and even if they dash away, you'll probably get them to low enough health that just hitting one more bullet on them after they hit that first dash, it'll probably kill them. Now, the big thing to counter the Shak is to force this thing into a sustained battle. If you can get past the first 20 rounds in the magazine, you force this weapon into a reload, and that's when you strike. So using things like shields, like your dome shield, throwing in a mesh shield, something like that, firing goo gun shots onto a Shak user, maybe you go and heal someone and make sure that they can tank the bullets, things like that, or just using like movement to waste their ammo. All of those things are the key to eliminating the Shak, because this thing's DPS is so good, you don't really want to just challenge it in a fair fight in close to mid range. You need to approach it with those advantages in mind. So yeah, number one weakness of this weapon is definitely being caught out with a reload, so try and force it into a sustained battle. Also, it does kind of poorly at range, like far range like this. I'll show you right here. Like it's okay, but nothing insane. Now, the M60 is pretty much the definition of a sustained weapon. This thing has pretty decent time to kills if you can just like hit your headshots, hit your body shots, make sure that you control all that recoil. But in terms of like the time to kills, it is not as fast as something like the Shak. Now, the strength of the M60 is definitely its power in team fights. This thing is kind of a beast in team fights if you know how to use it well, especially with its large ammo capacity. As you can see, it has 70 bullets in the magazine. And a lot of people don't know this, but if you hold down the trigger longer, the recoil actually gets better. So it really encourages you to get into those long, drawn-out fights. You pretty much always want shields with this thing. In terms of specializations, you can use a bunch of things. I recommend mesh shield if you're going with the M60 personally. Winch Claw just feels a little redundant with it, as you want to try and get those mid-range sustained battles, and bringing something like a Shak or an SA12 closer to you is just a death sentence. So I would really recommend having the mesh to help you keep those fights long and drawn out, which means that the counter to this weapon is definitely dive play styles. If you can come in with shotguns, with evasive maneuvers, if you can get into close ranges with like a Shak or an SA12 like I mentioned, those are the ways that you can absolutely destroy an M60 user. But if you let them fight on their terms, which is kind of that mid-range sustained battle, it's definitely going to be favored towards them. Also, taking a 1v1 with an M60 can be better, as this is more of a team shot weapon, but those are definitely good ways to counter it. You also can outduel it. It's not impossible, but if you're looking for just the most direct counters, definitely forcing one-on-one dive engagements is the play. Next, we have the SA12. This is kind of a burst slash sustain weapon. It is extremely good into team fights because you basically have 16 shots with it. And if you play your positioning and your cover and all of that stuff, you can wipe a whole team with this weapon without ever having to reload. Of course, in most cases, you're probably going to have to reload at some point, but if you play smart, you can technically just kill an entire team without having to do that. Now, a lot like the M60, this thing is extremely good into team fights, but much more brawly team fights. You want to be the first one into the action, throw down your dome shields, hit those winches. This thing will just absolutely destroy people. Now, you'll notice that every time I fire the 4th shot, this thing has to basically cycle. So I'll fire 4 shots here and it cycles. So this thing will have to cycle 3 times, and then on the 4th one it's going to be a full reload. So you always want to be playing around that cycle animation, because if you don't play around it right, it is going to get you killed. So what I recommend doing is going around trying to get that dive in, take those 4 shots, throw down the shields when you need it, stuff like that. But then when you need to cycle, throw in some evasive maneuvers. So if I go and I kill this light, and when I'm cycling, or if I'm reloading, I'm going to be sliding around, just repositioning like that. But then if I'm going on the offensive, I just hold W key to make sure that I get as much damage as I can, slide around when I cycle, back to W keying again. Now, winch canceling used to be a thing, but it's not anymore. So now the best option for you is just hitting the winch initially every single time. This is fantastic if you're in the middle of team fights, and it's pretty much what every pro player uses with this weapon. So just use winch. Mesh you can use. You can do something like this. I'll show you. You can fire 4 shots with it and then like mesh like that and then hit the cycle again. That's something you can do. You can also use the goo gun here. You can fire 4 shots here, and then you can like goo, but it's not really that effective. I don't really recommend it. And then I haven't seen this strategy used in a pretty long time, but you can do something like fire 4 shots, charge and slam like this, and your SA12 should be reset. So yeah, all of those specs can work. The only one I really wouldn't recommend is probably goo gun with this thing. Now, the counter to this weapon is definitely range. If you're at a mid-range or a long range, you can definitely outduel this thing pretty easily. But if you get into those close range engagements, you're definitely in the SA12 world right there, and you want to get as far away from the SA12 at that point as possible. So making sure that you don't get hit by their initial winch, that's usually the thing that is going to get you killed. Make sure that you dodge that winch as often as possible, because that is going to be the difference between you winning and losing in a fight against an SA12 user. Otherwise, as long as you play height, as long as you play your mid ranges, your long ranges, you should be pretty good against it. Using glitch grenades to take out the dome shields, which the SA12 can heavily rely on, is also a pretty good strategy as well. I just wanted to pause the video for a quick second here to mention that I'm going to be streaming on Twitch today and probably going to be doing more battle pass and multi-bucks giveaways. We've given away a ton already, and the only thing you need to do to enter is just to be there when I do it. So if you want a chance for some free stuff, come stop by. All right, back to the video. Now, the KS-23 is definitely the definition of a poke weapon. I would say that this is kind of close range to mid-range poke. It can be used at long range, but as you can see, it's pretty decent at this range, but it turns into a projectile weapon eventually. So while it definitely can be used like that, it's much more mid to close range. Now, in terms of specializations with this, I would definitely run Winch Claw. You can run Charge and Slam if you want to. I wouldn't recommend Mesh Shield or Goo Gun. It's kind of Winch Claw, Charge and Slam. Those are your best options. Now, with this thing, you always want to kind of be playing around either your team or cover, because this thing is a poke weapon. So you want to be kind of taking fights like this where you can go just poke out of cover like that, get some shots off, go back into cover, because otherwise this thing does not have a super amazing time to kill. Of course, you can try and go in with your team, like dome shield in, hit some shots, kind of do some movement, play in and out of your dome shield if you want to, if they get too close. There is a little combo you can do on lights that a lot of people don't know about. It requires lock bolt and winch claw. I'll show you it right here. What you have to do is hit the light with a lock bolt. You're then going to winch them, fire melee. But the important thing is that you have the lock bolt with you, because otherwise, if you try to just winch shoot melee them normally, they're going to be left on like 5 health. So you kind of need the lock bolt. And then, of course, the nice thing with this weapon is that it can break walls. So I can fire 2 shots and this wall is going to break. So you can kind of make like little poke cover areas whenever you feel like it. So for instance, I wanted to fight right here, and let's just pretend that this window isn't right there. I can take out this wall and I can like use this right here to get peek shots, and I can play like that. You can also use it to stall cash outs. Let's pretend like right here, there's a cash out right above here. I can fire 1 shot into the ceiling right here. And then when someone starts stealing, I can fire just 1 more shot, cash out, drop. It's as easy as that. Now, the weakness of this weapon is definitely those sustain fights. If you get it out into the open and there's not really a team to back up the KS-23, you can kill them pretty easily. Otherwise, getting a dive on them with something with a much faster time to kill is going to be your best option. The KS-23 is decent in mid to close ranges, but it heavily relies on teammates or playing around cover or just having good movement. And if you can guarantee that you have the advantage in those situations, then you are definitely going to win. Don't give them poke engagements, dive them, all in them, stuff like that. You can glitch them if you need to, RPGs, that sort of a thing. Just get on top of the KS-23 user and make it so that they can't run from you and that they have to fight you. And in those situations, you're usually going to be the one who wins. Now we've got the minigun, one of my favorite weapons in the game. This thing is kind of a dive sustain hybrid weapon. The thing is that this thing does not really do good at longer ranges. So like at the mid range here, like it's okay, but where it really shines is in these close ranges where it can absolutely delete people. So you kind of want to use this thing into shotgun ranges. It might seem a little odd, but that's how you use it. Anything mid to long range, I would actually just disengage completely. If you're fighting someone from like this range right here, or this range right here, I wouldn't even challenge it unless they're low already. I would just use your mesh shield and then back up completely. It's also something I recommend for this weapon is probably mesh shield in the current meta, which makes it a little bit challenging to fight something like the SA12 with winch claws and stuff, because that can really mess you up. But the mesh shield just allows you to disengage in those fights that you really don't want to take, so I definitely recommend it. I have a much longer video on the minigun that goes over a lot of the technicalities of it if you prefer to watch that, but I'll try to just summarize the basic things for you here. What you want to do is you want to be constantly priming the minigun. You can either do this by holding the right click like this, or you can do this by just holding the left click and it's going to slowly fire. Now the secret to the minigun is minigun b-hopping, where you try and get a run and then you are going to slide and jump at the end and then prime it as you continuously jump. This allows you to move closer towards your target, which you want to do, but also kind of gets rid of some of that immobilization of the minigun, which is definitely its biggest weakness. So if I want to fight this light, I would do something like this. Just like that. And this would also work for mediums and heavies as well. Now for this weapon, you can definitely counter it. One of the biggest issues with it is that you stand very still when you're using this thing and the range is pretty bad. So things like the revolver and the riot shield can really mess up this weapon. Most poke weapons do pretty well, but yeah, just things that can block it like the riot shield. And as I said, poke weapons, very good against this thing. And then sneaking behind them with a double barrel can also be pretty good as well, but it is a little bit risky. If you don't manage to kill them with that double barrel, they will probably kill you. So yeah, definitely try to poke this thing. You could force it into a sustain if you're mid to long range, but a sustain battle in that close range, you are definitely going to get killed. So just make sure that you play proper positioning, because the minigun heavily relies on positioning and playing with teammates. Now the Lewis is a heavily sustain focused weapon. This thing has pretty decent damage and it has pretty decent range as well. There's not much to complain about if you're just looking for an overall solid weapon. The recoil can be a little bit much at times. It does like to bounce around from side to side, which can definitely be annoying, but it has pretty decent all-around capabilities. So definitely just try and focus on making sure that you can manage the recoil. That's definitely the most important part of learning this gun. The other thing is making sure that you put a nice sight on it. I actually don't like the red dot, as I feel the dot on that sight is a little bit too big for this weapon in some of the ranges that it wants to challenge at. So I use something like this sight right here. But if you're on controller, it's probably not that big of a deal. That's more for my M&K players. But yeah, definitely just make sure that you get a very good sight on this thing, because it's going to make a huge difference when you're playing with it. Now to counter this thing, you kind of just have to outduel it. It's not like super difficult to outduel. You kind of just have to aim better than your opponent, right? Just play smart, don't be stupid. But if you want to, dives are pretty good against it. Poke is a little bit less effective because this thing has pretty decent range. You can poke it down. It's a little bit harder. I would definitely recommend a dive playstyle. Shotguns can really mess this thing up. Now we've got the flamethrower, and this is probably the most sustained weapon in the entirety of Heavy's kit. So the flamethrower will do a little bit of damage when you're holding left click, but it's also going to be doing damage over time just based off of the fire that it uses. But you also want to be making sure that you actually kind of track a little bit ahead of your opponents, because the flame takes time to get there. So if I just like play like this, as you can see, it's doing all right, you know. But if I leave my target a little bit like this, it's going to be doing way better. The biggest downside of this weapon is definitely the DPS on it. It's pretty lackluster. There have been times where I've seen people try and take out people on cash outs only for them to get healed by their entire team. And this gun just didn't have the DPS to stop the steal, and it cost games. So that's definitely why I recommend probably bringing something like the Pyromine. That way you can toss it on top of people who might be stealing a cash out. Let's say that this guy is going to steal a cash out. I can just do all of this burst damage with it, and that's probably enough to kill them. And if you're in doubt, you can toss down 2 or something like that. I also recommend Lockbolt with this weapon, because that just kind of keeps them in one area where you can try and just do crazy amounts of CQC damage, and then if their team tries to help them, you can deal damage to them. And then when they're locked in that one place, that's when you can start throwing down your dome shields. You can also just hit them a little bit like this, throw up your shield while they tick down with fire damage. You might get a kill, you might hurt them. They're going to waste ammo trying to shoot you in your shield, and once they've fired a bunch of bullets into it, then you swap back to the flamethrower and just go back to doing the same old thing just like that. This thing is very good in teamfights, but it has to be within a specific set of criteria, which is being within kind of these close range engagements and making sure that they cannot leave this area. Now, one little tip that I'm going to give with the flamethrower is that if you play around these areas with plants and stuff like that, basically any of this burnable stuff, that's pretty good for you, because if any of their team comes down and help, that's a lot more passive burn damage just kind of going around. You can even hit them with additional passive burn damage. So if someone is playing in areas with lots of plants that can burn very easy, just like that, it's going to be super, super good for you. One more thing you can do with the flamethrower is you can actually like hit around walls. I'll kind of show you like this. This thing has a little bit of an area where it can sometimes just curve around walls a little bit. So like if there's someone up here, I tend to just kind of spray flames up in this general direction, and you can usually get some nice damage on people without them being able to shoot back at you. Now, to counter this thing, glitch grenades mess up this thing so badly. This thing can rely on shields a lot, both dome shield, mesh shield, and even lockbolt is something that you can glitch as well. So making sure that you bring glitch grenades or maybe even glitch traps, those are very, very important if you want to hard counter the flamethrower. But otherwise, just staying out of its effective range, kiting them around, stuff like that. You can also out DPS it with most weapons, so if you like hit all of your shots with the SA12, you can usually reliably kill a flamethrower user before they kill you. So if you are very good at your aim and you can consistently kill people, you can often just DPS check a flamethrower, but that's a little bit more risky than just simply kiting it around. Next up is the Sledgehammer, and this is probably the most divey weapon that Heavy has. It can get pretty good time to kills, but you just need to make sure that you are like constantly on top of people like this. Otherwise, they are going to be able to get away from you a lot. So that's why I definitely recommend using something like Winch Claw. You can make it work with Charge and Slam. You can make it work with Mesh Shield, but I feel like Winch Claw is just like the most consistent thing. It also brings people in towards your team, and they can help team shot. And then you can usually get pretty good kills on them. You can also use Goo Gun too, but I'll kind of go over how to use that in a minute here. But what I think one of the most important things with this weapon is learning its combos. So with the light, it's basically just one right click. You've probably seen it, right? You hit a light over the head, it's one shot. But with the medium, what you want to do is you want to go one to the head and then one left click. And then with the heavy, you want to just do 2 overheads, just like that. In terms of equipment, you'll notice that I have RPG on. Some of you can use Lockbolt. Lockbolt will probably be fine in most elos. It'll actually probably be very good in a lot of elos, but in some of the higher end levels of the game, a lot of the dash lights and just better players in the game, people with jump pads, stuff like that, can abuse kind of the bouncing around nature of the Lockbolt and kind of just rubber band all over the place, making it even harder for you to kill them. So definitely something to watch out for with the Sledgehammer is that in those higher ranked levels, people do know how to counter Lockbolt, and it can actually mess you up, which is why I personally run RPG just in case they somehow get away. It's usually enough to kill them just hitting a little bit of splash damage. Now, 2 things that I consider to be very important to use when you're using a Sledgehammer is making sure that you know how to use goo to block off both yourself and block off enemies, and also how to bait attacks like around corners and through walls and stuff like that, because a lot of you might not know this, but the Sledgehammer can hit through walls. So let's say that this guy's going to come right here. I actually hit them through that right there. See that? So as long as I can predict where people are coming, like if I know this guy's going to come through the doorway, or I think that there's like someone standing right here, I can right click jump and I can usually get a nice little hit on them and then drop them down as well. So always be trying to like hit people like around corners and through walls and stuff like that. If you think someone's going to chase you, just like right click the corner. You can usually get a kill that you like completely wouldn't have otherwise. This thing is really powerful if you know how to do that. And then another thing, like if you get shot, just having a goo to run away like that. Or let's say that this guy is running away from you and you used up your winch already, just throwing that in front of them. Maybe they'll get caught inside of it. That can be a great way to get kills on people. I should also mention how to play with the goo sledge. This is a little bit more of a niche strategy, but I'll show you how it's done. So what you want to do is you're going to hit them once with the goo gun, and then you're going to run up to them. And then when the goo breaks, you are going to hit them one more time, swap to your Sledgehammer, and right-click them. So I'll show you here. Once, goo breaks, one more time, right click, just like that. And then you repeat that. So you want to just usually hit them once or twice with the goo until you're like right on top of them, like literally on top of them. And then you right click. If you do it too soon, you're going to miss the right click and then it's all going to be for nothing. And if you give it too much time, they're just going to run away. So you got to be very, very careful with it. So then just once again to show you, hit them once, run up like this, one more time, slide into it, just like that. Now, of course, the biggest counter to this weapon is just range, because this thing, obviously, you know, it can't hit from range at all. So basically just play kind of from this range over here, or like this range or farther, get height advantages on it. Make sure that you don't fight it in enclosed spaces over there where it's going to bait you into right clicks and stuff like that. You got to make sure that you play your positioning very, very well with this thing, and do not get hit with the initial witch by this thing, because you're pretty much dead at that point. So just always be careful of making sure that you dodge the winch claw with this thing and making sure that you play in the proper range. Now, the spear is a very straightforward weapon. It plays a lot like the sledge. You want to kind of be in these enclosed spaces. I would recommend, once again, like the sledge, running either winch or goo gun. It's really up to you, whichever one you prefer. I personally feel that winch is a little bit more reliable, but the extra range on the spear does work well with goo gun, so it's up to you. But you kind of just want to be playing around walls like this and kind of getting random hits around corners like that, making sure that you get little predictions. It does take like a second to actually swing, so just make sure that you swing a little bit before you plan your target to be there. Once they actually get there, then you're going to hit them. Now, of course, you also have the right click, but the right click can absolutely be a death sentence if you don't use it correctly, because, like, let's see this, it locks you into the animation like that. It's not even that powerful. It doesn't do like a crazy amount of damage and people can just run outside of it. Like, it doesn't slow them down or anything, so it's not super powerful, which is why I just recommend the sledge in most scenarios. But the one nice thing is that it's kind of got this silly hit registration where sometimes, every once in a while, you can get hits through walls with it. And this is also why I run barricade with spear, because I can like right click it and I can get like random hits on top of people as long as I'm like jumping over it. The hit registration on spear is just a little wonky sometimes, so just make sure that you use that if you want to do well with this thing. And of course, the biggest counter to this weapon, just like the sledgehammer, is range. Don't get hit with a winch from a spear. Don't get hit with goo from a spear, as much as you can at least. And just make sure that you don't play in spaces that spears want to play. It's really that easy. Spear is probably one of the easier weapons to counter in the game, so yeah, just make sure that you're aware of your positioning and you should be good. Next up is the MGL. This thing is pretty silly, but it can be very, very inconsistent, so let me just kind of explain how it works. This thing is going to hit a target once, whether that be an actual person, or whether that be a prop, or whether that be like a wall or something like that, and then it is going to bounce, and then the second time that it hits something, it's going to explode. There is one exception to that though, and that's if you like fire it into the air like this and it takes way too long to come down. In that situation, it's just going to explode on impact. But if you are firing it normally, it's going to bounce once and then it's going to explode. So here, I'm going to fire it, it's going to bounce once and then it's going to explode. So just watch this, just like that. There we go. You can also get really close to your target. If you happen to fire at their feet and it hits them, it's going to explode immediately. And that's optimally what you want to do. Sometimes it's hard to actually pull off, of course, but that's what you want to try for at least. You want to predict where they go. Just like make sure that you like try and fire at their feet, because that's going to be the most efficient way for you to kill them. Otherwise, you can like try pulling off like trick shots like that and like bouncing it off the walls, but just firing it like towards where you think they are going to end up and making sure that it lands like right on top of their feet is going to be the most consistent way for you to deal damage to them. Now, this thing is countered by a lot of things. Obviously, like if you get really, really close to your target, firing like this is not going to be very good for you. Like this just sucks, right? It's horrible in close range. So if you fight the MGL in close range, you're most likely going to win. And if you get like height on them, if I try firing up here with the MGL, like it's not really going to work well. Like those hits that I'm getting are on this dummy right here. If someone's shooting at me actually from like up here, because it needs to like bounce once for the most part, right? I'm not going to be doing very much damage to them. They're going to win. So making sure that you play like close ranges, playing around height, stuff like that. That's the easiest counter to this weapon. Melee weapons, once again, super good. You can use the APS turret in a 1v1. That's actually really, really good, because that means they have to waste a bunch of grenade launcher shots before they can actually deal damage to you, which is usually enough time for you to kill them. The only thing you potentially have to watch out for, which is the one thing that I recommend all MGL players use, is charge and slam, because as you saw before, MGL sucks in close range. So charge and slam is either a way to finish off someone who was low health who got too close to you, or use it as a way to knock them away and escape back into a place where you can start challenging them on your range once again. Deagles. These things are very, very good. They're one of the best ranged options on the heavy class. And just to demonstrate, like that's pretty good damage. But the one thing that you have to watch out for is that you want to make sure that you pace your shots on this thing. This thing does very good damage, but only if you consistently hit your headshots. If you're just hitting body shots, using the LMGs and stuff like that on the heavy class is usually better. So just making sure that you pace your shots and hitting your headshots, it's the most important thing to do with this weapon. Just make sure that you are hitting your headshots. Even if you don't fire as often, it's better to hit and deal a ton of damage than to just miss a lot. Also at longer ranges, if I just like spam fire like this, like as you can see, it's not super reliable. So definitely at those mid to long ranges, just like make sure that you like actually pace yourself with your shots. Even then, sometimes they can like have a little bit of bloom as you're seeing right there, but it's definitely better than just spam firing it. So just make sure that you pace your shots very carefully, unless they're close range like this or like mid range, in which case just fire away. Make sure that you hit those headshots, which is definitely why this thing is much more of a sustained weapon. You want to kind of get in these mid ranges. Close range is pretty okay with it. Long range is pretty okay with it. It's definitely like a very sustained poke focused weapon. So just make sure that you're playing into engagements that favor sustain. You can kind of play poke with it a little bit because like it is a single shot weapon, but it is not a burst weapon. So don't really treat it as such unless you are specifically versus lights and you have winch claw, in which case you can do something like this. If you hit that one initial headshot when you winch them in, that could be a pretty fast time to kill on them, but otherwise just try and play mid and long range angles for the most part, unless you're in a team engagement, of course. But like those are the optimal engagement ranges for you. Now, the big counter to this thing is that it is a little bit weaker to dives. Like a good double barrel player is probably going to mess you up. Just shotguns in general, SMGs, stuff like that. If they get behind you, get a good flank on you, or they just get you in a position where they surprise you and forces you to like try and get flick headshots on something that you're like gonna miss. Like, oh no, the double barrel player appeared in front of me. Like I can try to hit him, but like you're not guaranteed to do that. You know, he's going to be moving, he's going to be dashing around, stuff like that. Because obviously if like he approaches you from the front and mid range, you can just do that. But let's say a shotgun player just jumps you like this, you're going to have to be forced to like swivel and just like do something like that, which is going to be very hard for the majority of the player base. So countering them with like shotguns and stuff like that. Also moving around, like I mentioned, dash is good, but like just kind of like throwing in good strafes, good crouches, stuff like that. Throwing in a couple jumps here and there can really mess up their headshot time to kill specifically, which is super good against this weapon. So just always be moving. And finally, we have the BFR Titan, one of my new favorite weapons on the heavy. This thing has probably taken the place of being the best ranged weapon on the heavy class at the moment. As you can see, I'll just kind of show you, like, look how much damage this thing can do. Let me just explain the time to kills of this weapon really quickly. It's 2 body shots to a light or 1 headshot in a melee. So here, 2 body shots, just like that. Or I can get 1 headshot melee like that. And then with the medium, it's going to be 2 headshots or 3 body shots. And then with the heavy, you want to try and go for 2 headshots and a body shot. So a lot like the Deagles, I recommend acing your shots. Hitting your bullets with this weapon is so important, especially because you only have 5 bullets in the magazine and it takes so long for you to reload. So just making sure that you hit your shots, probably headshots, like always be going for headshots with this thing. That's what I say too. It's definitely poke focused, so making sure that you play around cover, just having a place that you can escape to when you inevitably need to reload, playing around your team, playing around height. You want to play kind of like mid to far range as often as possible. And then when you get into the close ranges and they start pushing you, that's when you use the winch combos. So let me show you those quickly. So with the light, you can winch them. And once you hit them with that winch damage, they're actually going to be able to get 1 shot to the head. So what you want to do is you're going to winch them, flick up just a little bit towards their head. Do not scope in for this. I recommend hip firing. And just click on their head as the winch kind of stops them in place. Just like that. And then if you get the like medium right here, if you get the headshot on them like that, they will only be 1 body shot away from being killed instead of a headshot away. And then with the heavy, it's a little bit weird, but if you manage to hit them with 1 headshot and then 1 body shot and then a second body shot, you can then winch them and melee them. I should talk about the reloading a little bit quickly here because like as you fire this thing, you'll notice that once you go to reload it, it's a very slow reload and it reloads 1 bullet at a time. I definitely recommend having a scope. That way, like if you're reloading, you can still scope in and see where your weapon is going, because with the iron sights is a little bit weird. But yeah, if you want to like keep firing and then like reloading as you like aim down sights, that's definitely something that you can do. Just keep that in mind, but it is definitely not optimal. So I would try to engage pretty much only when you have 4 or 5 bullets in the chamber. But if you really have to engage, you can like scope and reload at the same time. Now, the counter to this weapon is a lot like the SHAK, where if it gets caught out without ammo, this thing is pretty easy to kill. If you get this guy to waste his shots, or he like misses his shots or whatever, or he doesn't kill you, that's going to be your chance to strike. So if this guy can't kill you in the 5 shots, now's your chance to push him and kill him for good. Call out to your team that you're pushing this guy, he's wasted his ammo or something like that, or he's reloading, you know, that sort of a thing. That's your chance to take out the Titan user. Also, dive can be a pretty good counter to it as well, like shotguns and things like that. Of course, if they get a perfect winch combo on you, they can still kind of turn it around in their favor, but they have to play it literally perfectly. So usually dive strategies are pretty good against this thing. Poke is going to be horrible. This is one of like the poke kings. Sustain is pretty good, but I would recommend just getting like good dives and using good movement, because as I said before, this thing really relies on you being able to like flick and hit headshots like that. And if you can't hit headshots like that, especially if you are jumping around and stuff like that, that is going to be the biggest counter to this weapon. Having good dives, good strafes, good jumps and stuff, making them waste their ammo. That's how you kill the Titan user. But yeah, that's going to be all from me for today. That was the long-awaited how to use and counter every heavy weapon in the finals. That's going to be all from me for today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.